Welcome back, everyone. Let's briefly discuss the outer merge option. So setting how is equal to outer allows us to include everything present in both tables. Recall that we can match Andrew and Bob in both tables. However, we have names that only appear in one table, like Charlie and David and Xavier and Yolanda. We can use the how is equal to outer to make sure we grab all names from both tables, essentially just grabbing everything. So this is often displayed as a Venn diagram where everything is filled. You're going to get all the names in the registrations table, all the names in the logins table, which means you'll get both where they match and where they don't match. So your final results will look like this. Here we can see all the names, and then if we're missing values from either the registration ID column or the log ID column, they'll be filled in with null values. This is just kind of a quick and dirty way to join everything at once, regardless of null values or missing data. So let's quickly explore this in Pandas. All right, here I am back at the Jupyter Notebook. We can see here that if I take a look at registrations, I have the A, B, C, D names. And then logins, we only have the A and B names, Andrew and Bobo, with Xavier and Yolanda. So what happens if we say PD merge? We'll say registrations, logins, how is equal to outer, and then we'll do it on the name column. Run this, and notice we get back those results with some missing values. The other thing to note is that order, in this case for outer, similar to inner, won't actually matter. So if we say registrations second, you'll get back the same results. However, the sorting will be different, but the overall results are the same. It's just that your order for Xavier and Yolanda are dictated by the logins table or data frame instead of the registrations one. So again, we always don't really care about the order of things when it talks about merging two tables together because we can always sort values by any of these columns that we prefer. Okay, so that's it for the outer join. Let's finish up these lectures on combining data frames by quickly discussing how to join on an index instead of a column. So what I'm going to do is I will say registrations is equal to registrations, and then I'm actually going to set index as the name column. So if I take a look at registrations, I have now name as the index with only one column, this registration ID. And so if I don't actually edit anything in logins and I want to merge these together, I have to specify now that I actually want to join on the registrations index and on the logins name column. So that's actually easy to do with PD merge. You simply say PD merge, and we'll go ahead and say registrations, logins, and then if we do Shift Tab here, we specified our left and right tables. And if you expand on this, beyond how and on, there is also, we can see here, if we keep scrolling down, a left index parameter as well as a right index parameter, and a left on parameter and a right on parameter. We've only so far shown you this on parameter. So the on parameter is the most basic one, and it essentially just says, okay, this name or column happens to exist as a column in both data frames. But what we can do is specify that we're looking left on, which stands for a column in the left table, or right on, which stands for a column in the right table, or we can also say left index, which just says look at the left table or left data frame index, or right index, look at the right index, and then we can combine these. So if we look at registrations, that's the left table, and that means I want the left index. So I will say the left index is true, and then if I look at the right table, logins, I want that one to be this name column. So then I say right on is the name column. And as you can see, with the combination of left index or right index, left on or right on, I should be able to combine any index in a table with any column in any other table. And I don't need to worry if it's in the left or the right. I can always specify. So here we're finally just going to say how is equal to inner, and we get the same results as we saw last time. Keep in mind the order of the columns may be slightly different depending on how you're actually joining these together. Finally, I want to show you what happens if you're dealing with different key column names in the joined tables. So let's take a look at this registrations table. I'm going to reset the index to make it a column again. We'll say reset index. Take a look at registrations. Here it is. Name is a column now. Registration ID is a column. And let's say that registration.columns, registrations.columns. And let's actually rename these so that we have reg name and reg ID. So essentially changing from name to registration name. So now what happens if I say registrations and then take a look at logins, notice that registration name is a different column name than just the name here. So while they do represent the same thing, Andrew in this registrations table is still Andrew in this logins table, they no longer have the same column name. So what's going to happen then is, again, as you may have guessed given what you've already just learned about merging on an index, is after passing in the tables and deciding on how you want to do it, so we can say again how is inner, we just have to specify that on the left table, so left on, that's registrations, that the name of the column I want to look at is called reg name, and then right on is called the original name. Again, just expanding on this idea of left on, right on, or left index true or right index true. And there we have it. Something to keep in mind here is it will return both the reg name and name, even though they should technically be representing the same values. So because of that, you can always just drop it afterwards. So if we say results is equal to this, and we take a look at the results, if I really wanted to, I don't want that duplicate, I can just say drop reg name along axis equal to 1, which drops a column as we know already. Okay, so again, there's left on, right on, which can take in specific column names for your left table and right table, and then there's left index, right index that are just booleans, true or false, whether you want to actually say the index instead of a column. Okay, and last thing I want to show you is how pandas can actually conveniently add or tag duplicate columns. So let's take a look at registrations table again. I'm going to rename these columns one last time as name, and then instead of registration ID, let's just call it ID. And then logins, what we're going to do, if we take a look at this guy, has login ID and name. I'm going to say the columns are now equal to ID and name. So we have registrations and logins. And this is actually a pretty realistic situation where you have this ID column and it doesn't actually specifically say reg ID, or logins doesn't specifically say login ID, because it's kind of implied by the fact that it's in the logins data frame or logins table. Same for this ID, it's just implied that this is the registration ID because it's in the registrations data frame. So what's going to happen is if we actually merge on these, we will get two columns with the exact same name. And what Pandas is going to do is it will automatically label these. So we'll say PD merge, registrations, logins. Let's do this inner, and we'll say on this name column. So it's not a big deal that name is the same column name because that's actually what I'm joining on. But let's see the results that are returned back because ID and ID here are the same. So when you run this, you'll notice Pandas automatically tags these duplicate columns with a suffix. And by default, it does _x for the left table and _y for the right table. Now, this may not be clear what's actually happening, so instead, you can provide your own tuple of the suffix you want to use for each table. So we say suffixes, and then we add a tuple here. This should be a tuple of two strings. Essentially, by default, it's _x, _y. So _x for this left-hand table, _y for this right-hand. But instead, probably choose some different names like, let's say, _reg for the left-hand table since it's registrations. And then my second item in this tuple, I'll say it's _log for the suffix for login results. And so now what's going to happen is if you have columns that happen to have the exact same name in both tables, and you're not joining on those columns, so you expect both ID columns to be returned, in order to specify which ID goes with which table, instead of using the default suffix that Pandas assigns, we can provide our own tuple here. We run this, and now we get back these results. Okay, so that's it for combining data frames. Again, lots of stuff we covered here, but throughout the course, we won't actually be joining too many CSV files. We'll try to conveniently place all the information for you in one larger CSV file, but realistically, you're often joining data sets from various sources. And now with pd.merge and pd.concat, you should know how to combine different data frames as you see fit. Thanks, and I'll see you at the next lecture.